Welcome to Programming in IControl with Java. Today we're going to walk through how to use Java in Eclipse to create IControl projects with the core IControl API. We will not cover the wrappers in any way today, but the Java wrappers will be the subject of a future tutorial. So we have Eclipse open, and it has no project, so the first thing we need to do is create a project. And there's an important step in here, that's why we started here. Regular Java project, we will call it Java test. And then if you click next, which is cut off of my screen here, but that's what I did, and click on libraries, you can add external jars. Now after you build the IControl API, by the instructions in the API document, you come up with an icontrol.jar. So we have put all of the support libraries, the ones that the API documents say you need, and icontrol.jar into a folder just off of root called javalib. We take all of those and include them in the project, and then we click finish, and it inserts them into the project as expected. Now the nice thing about this is you can then go to icontrol.jar and see all of the classes, members, and interfaces that are available in iControl. Then you can use these to build an application. Now we're not going to build a whole application. What we'll do is show you the pieces, new class, we'll call it test main. Root of java.lang.object, we want it to have a main because it is our main class. We'll leave it in the default project because this is just a sample. Okay. So then we declare we're going to today we're going to look at the system info class. Now there's always two things that you need when using iControl. You need the system info binding stub, and system info locator. The naming convention in iControl is the grouping system, the class name, system info, and then access text binding stub onto the end for the local representation of that class, and itax locator onto the end for the piece that communicates with the big IP and finds where the routines actually rest. So you will find system information seems kind of weird, but it is the grouping name, the class name. So you get system statistics, virtual compression, statistic entry is system statistics is the grouping, virtual compression entry is the class. Same is true with the ones we're going to use today. So in the statistics piece, we can or in the system information piece rather, we can scroll down and see all of the things available to us. Unfortunately, I can't show too much here because we've got a limited amount of space that we can use. Now a nice easy one to use for this is get system ID. So the first thing we want to do is import class. Remember, it's what group is it in, and then the locator, and the binding stub. As I said, the locator finds the interface on the remote side, and the binding stub represents the interface on this side. So then we need to declare a binding stub. And we'll set it to null. I'll show you in a moment you don't have to declare a locator, but we will. Okay, so we want the get system info port. That gets us the port that system information can be had on, or the system information class can be had on. And then that takes a parameter. I'll show you in a moment how endpoint is formatted. Endpoint is really just a excuse me. Endpoint is really just a oh, this is not right. We want a new system information locator, and then stub equals loc dot get. There we go. So we get a new system info locator, and then we use that system info locator to get the system info port pointed to by endpoint. Now, let's see, URL is not imported, but that's in, what is that in java.net URL. There we go. Okay. Now this has a red line under it because we don't have endpoint yet. I'm sure if you cursor over that, that's what it will say. Endpoint can't be resolved. And then this needs to be cast every time because it's turning back, or it's returning a generic piece. So there we go. So the cast works. And then this should be string. Now, assuming that endpoint was correct, then you should be able to say, and look, you get all of the routines for the class. And we want get version, which returns a string. There we go. The documentation on the wiki is solid, so get version is well documented on the wiki for you to be able to find it. Now this took us 4 lines of code plus setting up the endpoint URL, which we have not talked about yet, but I'll show you in a moment. With the wrappers, this is considerably shorter, but we're not talking about the wrappers here. This is the minimum number of lines required to make a call in the core IControl API. Now, could you cut one of these lines out? Yes. We actually quite often merge these 2 lines into one, which was why I had a little stumbling there getting them separated out. I wanted to make it clear for this tutorial, but you can merge them into one, but you're still doing the same number of commands because this is what it takes to communicate with IControl via Axis. So now we have the routine. If endpoint were correctly defined, which it is HTTPS And then for the URL after that, it would be username, password, ampersand, the address of the machine or the DNS name of the machine, and then by machine I mean of the big IP, and then / IControl / IControl portal CGI. So if we went Don : password at Don's big IP / IControl / portal.cgi. There we have it. So here's the path on the big IP. There's the name of the big IP, ampersand, password, Don. Okay, the one thing I forgot is, there you have it. Now this is ready to go. It doesn't seem to think so. Oh. I'm so used to the system Eclipse automatically closing my quotes that I missed that. Okay, and then there's the one catch. There are 3 different types. Well, there are a lot of different types of exceptions, but most often we see service exception or remote exception, which means something wrong on the remote end. The malformed URL exception will only happen in places where you're where you're doing new URL. There is authorization exception, which is you don't have rights to execute that routine, and no route to host exception is pretty common also. So we'll just, if we then wrap all of this, caps lock's on. If we wrap all of this in obviously you'd be more exacting than just the exception E. Oops. Now it auto closes for me. That's all. And this throws exceptions also. So you would have to say nope. So there's a lot. In the IControl API, I always do that. You can't declare it inside a try catch and expect it to be visible. And I don't know why I consistently do that. Okay. There we go. Now this is fully capable of running and actually getting the system ID at this point, assuming that there's actually a device at this location, and there's not. Since this is going on the public internet, I'm obviously not typing my username and password into it. But as you can see, this gives us, we use the system, and this is true for all of them. We declare a binding stub. We declare a system info locator. This works for every class you might want to call in the IControl API. You need a binding stub and a locator. You create the binding stub using the locator by calling locator get x port, where x is the class that you're trying to interface with, in this case system info, and passing it information to log into your big IP. Then you can call the routines on the stub. The stub will have all of the routines that show up in the class if you select the class in IControl, and then you can do what you need to with the data. This over and over is how you write to the IControl API. The documentation online will help you with what each routine does and figure out which routines you want to use, but this is the mechanism that you use to call. And that will be about it for today. We have some sample applications with the API included in the samples Java directory. There are some simple applications where you'll see that they all do the same thing. And there's a lot of power out there. A lot of things you can do. Just remember that every time you want to get the binding stub, you want to get a locator, you want to use the locator to find the binding stub, and then you can use the stub to call the routines that you want to access. Very powerful tool set. We hope that you have fun with it. If you have any questions, feel free to visit the forums. We'll be more than happy to help you out. This is Don McVitie for DevCentral, thanking you for your time.